So this evening's presentation is entitled Dalmuir S&C refurbishment, and I'll now pass you on to Jonathan Lowe whenever you're ready. Jonathan.
Yeah, so this presentation is on Dalmuir S&C refurbishment. It's a wee bit hastily put together due to late notice, but hopefully it will be quite engaging for everyone. It also goes into a bit of S&C refurbishment in general. First off, so who are Watch Delivery Track Scotland? So we're like an internal renewal and refurb option for internal to Network Rail. So we've got 138 staff based across 6 depots and 2 offices, one in Dundee, which is well frequented by our chief executive, Alex Hines, and one in Glasgow at St Vincent Street. So yeah, staff all over the country. We've got frontline staff, technical staff, engineers, managers, and admins and planners, etc. And I said before, we do track renewals and refurb licenses. Yeah, so there's a wee bit in the bottom corner there about our S&C refurb work bank. So in CP6, which is 2019 to 2024, we're going to deliver 208 units in total, of which 172 are medium refurb, which will come on to a minute, 29 are heavy, and 7 are complete renewal. However, it's complete renewal in the refurb sense. So I'll explain a bit more on that as we go on, but it's not really renewal as in RSA, conventional track renewals renewal at all. So again, what is S&C refurb? So you can see the different work descriptions across there. So you've got your S&C refurb, complete renewal, then you've got definitions of medium and heavy refurb. So and the kind of conventional ones, in both cases, you're doing a fettle, so you're renewing the pads, your clips, insulators, bolts. Didn't put them down there, but obviously your ferrules and chair screws, etc. as well. So you're giving it a fettle and tighten up and a refresh. Partial retimber. So you're not renewing all the timbers. You're taking the worst ones out and putting good ones in as required. Typically, it's about 30 timbers on a layout for a medium or heavy. And as part of the work that we do as well, we renew the stretcher bars. So we re-gauge the switches and put new stretchers in. And you've probably seen them around the network. There's a standard called 6100, and we're putting in the tubular stretchers in most places now that you've seen. Obviously, in some locations you can't put those on, but mostly they're getting upgraded to the tubular stretchers when we're in as well. There's no reballast as part of a medium. However, if you do a heavy refurb, there is a reballast option. Up until recently, that was primarily with the rail vac, and we kind of moved away from that in the past 3 years, and we're finding that due to increase in costs in the rail vac and other issues, it's almost as cost efficient now to lift the panels out and do a kind of more condensed or reballast. But reballast is really the difference between heavy refurb and medium refurb. And then obviously when you get into the S&C panels, you can see there, that's in the kind of S&C refurb renewal. So you're taking out panels like for like and then putting them back in. But with our kind of S&C refurb renewal, which you'll see in a minute, it's not always the ballast. And again, when you get down to steelwork, it's not always preferred for medium or heavy refurb. However, there's a lot of argument for doing the steelwork because steelworks are trigger point for poor track geometry. So yeah, it's always a controversial topic about what you can and what you can't do. We've really much got a cost limit to all these items. So like ideally you do everything, but there is limits to what you can and can't do. So this is going to be a bit controversial, and apologies for everyone who's going to correct me on the timeline. We can maybe do that when we get to questions. Hopefully everyone can see it. So a history of refurb. So kind of before what was known as Phase 2 BC, again, you're going to call me out in dates on this, S&C refurb was typically delivered by a track section manager and network creators. They were given funds to spend on S&C units to their discretion. And then after that, about 2010, there was a separate works delivery team created within maintenance, but sat within the kind of maintenance function. And then round about 2012, we had Neil Denton was kind of commissioned, and he came up with the kind of best practice for re-gauging, which was the back-to-back gauge and the square peg in a round hole. Before that time, it was the round peg in a round hole. It's quite a significant step in S&C refurb, because up to that point there was kind of lots of ways of re-gauging points and whatnot, but the back-to-back gauge allows you to, obviously, it's the outside edges of the unit, so switch, side wear and other items aren't affected by that. So, yeah, so it's quite a pivotal moment in the kind of era of S&C refurb. Round about 2014, again, it's round about this date, works delivery kind of became a standalone function for maintenance, with a focus on trying to improve outputs. And then about 2015, we spoke about the tubular stretcher bars, and that's when that standard came in, which was obviously the kind of ongoing after effects of the derailment. Steve, you can correct me on this, Lamrig. Lamrig, the kind of Network Rail eventually came up with as the kind of best practice stretcher bar following that incident. And at that point in time, when we're kind of becoming a standalone function and whatnot, we're trying to take on more kind of challenging works. So until that point, we hadn't done anything to improve the point operated equipment or do like the rebalancing items, and that's when that kind of comes in. Just a bit note to myself, 2019, that's when I came into the team. Not really pivotal as other stuff, but yeah, it's just a point in time. And 2020, we've got a standard for S&C refurb, which is TRK 3415. It talks about target asset life extension. And 2021, we did our first kind of S&C refurb like for like renewal, which is not a renewal, but it's like a renewal, but it's like a third of the cost. So hopefully we can get a bit of a good discussion on that later. And then going forward, we've had modernising maintenance and Network Rail. So the people on the call that aren't aware of that, Network Rail's kind of trimmed down its teams and try to make maintenance more of a kind of reactionary type team and more flexible. But as part of that, we may need to flex what works deliveries in order to support them. And we've also got this huge performance challenge. So the PPM, which is the performance measure that we use, which someone else can explain in another meeting, needs to move up by 5 percentage points, which is a huge step change for us. So we may need to put more of a focus on performance than asset life extension as we try and address that. So coming on to Dalmuir, loads of works in the area. For those that do and don't know the area, we were doing work to 345A points and 345B catch points, which is in platform 5. That work was done in 22-23, and this year we've just completed the renewal of 345B and 345A points. And we also, as part of that, converted the layouts from jointed layouts to CWR. There's some other notes in there about other works that works delivery teams have done. So our signalling team was in there doing double tail cabling, which is obviously got a performance aspect. That's for the insulated joints and other signalling cables. Done a lot of slab repairs and what's known as Dalmuir twin tunnels, or also known as Dalmuir tunnel number 23, which isn't actually on this shot, it's a bit further down. In platform 5 in Dalmuir, we've also renewed the slab, and we've also done about half a mile of drainage refurb in the area. So there's loads of work in this area going on. It's quite interesting. This area was a huge, I'll say huge, I suppose it is, well, it's a high proportion of delayments in the route, for the whole route, with it being life expired assets. They had issues in the tunnel as well with track defects, etc. So it was a critical route for this kind of level of investment. It was rumoured to be 40% of all delay minutes in the central belt, but I'm not sure how true that is. But certainly there's a a lot of pressure on us to get this work done this year. So yeah, a bit of an explanation is, so an S&C refurb complete renewal as opposed to traditional track renewals, renewal. So does it have a design and all that stuff, and O299 appointments and engineers appointment? Yes, it does. However, you're not getting your NR56 concrete layout, shallow depth, and it's going back like for like. So if you've got a timber layout, it's going back in as a timber layout. If it's full depth switches, it's full depth switches, etc. So it's very much a much lower spec. Upgrade to point operating equipment, so you'll get a refresh of your point operating equipment. So if you've got clamp locks, it's all new clamp locks that go in. However, you're not getting that upgrade to maybe wheel putting clamp lock version 2, probably the associate stuff. So you're not getting the version 3, and you're not getting any high drive or anything like that. So it's kind of a minor POE refresh. I suppose it's new for old, isn't it? You're not getting a remodel of the layout. So if there's any issues, which like there is at Dalmuir, which I'll come on to, they're not getting addressed. So you're not getting a points heating upgrade or an upgrade of the supply to that. You're not getting an upgrade of the OLE bonding, which is done as a conventional renewal. You're not getting that rationalisation of IRJs or any kind of minor signaling stuff that gets done. It's all like for like. And again, you're not getting the associated plain line. So it's a much reduced spec. However, you are getting essentially a renewal of what's there before. And you would also get converted to CWR if it was jointed before, which we know is an issue within the network. Joints is probably one of our worst enemies in respect of actionable faults. You see a rebars would be optional, so you'd always do it in a conventional turret renewal, but you'd only do it in an S&C refurb complete renewal if there was a driver there for it, because you're maybe not going for your full asset life extension. And again, the cost is significantly cheaper because you're not doing all that stuff. It's about 30% of the cost, which is interesting. So for the Dalmuir jobs that we delivered, so 345 AB, which I'll go back because I did skip over it, is this entry into platform 5 and the catch points. That was originally going to be a medium refurb, and then when the guys were out scoping, and when we go out scoping, we go out usually go out the section manager, which is best practice. We've got these points are in terrible condition. Can you do a renewal? So it was all rather late notice. However, there was a lot of political backing behind it, given all the performance aspects in the area. This was just one of the things. So we had an instruction from the client to go, let's do this in week 3, and between week 3 and week 33, we secured a disruptive design, got the S&C panels, etc. So it's like a 30-week turnaround for a renewal. So that was in 22-23, and then in 23-24, again, the 344AB was going to be a medium refurb. And actually the TME was on a walkout with the route director, which is Liam Sumter. TME is Tom. Sorry, Tom. Yeah, and Tom said to him, I don't want any of this medium refurb, I want a complete renewal here. And Liam Sumter said, no worries, Tom, we'll make that happen. So and again, we got the official go ahead in week 6, and by week 26, although we delivered again another complete renewal in like 6 months time scale, which is quite remarkable. There's a wee bit of a picture here. So the picture on the left is the S&C were renewed in 22-23, and on the right is the 23-24 renewal. And just here are some pictures of all the issues in the area. It's always good when you review these pictures because everyone goes, oh, it's not as bad. When I maintained tractors, I had much worse than stuff. But you can see it's got all the kind of typical kind of problems that you can associate with S&C. There's lots of damage to the switches. these insulated joints here, I think these are probably some of the good ones, but you can see that there in the damage to them. Getting a lot of failures associated with these. So all the joints were like this in the layout. You can see as well that lots of issues there. Some more pictures. You can see the condition of some of the bearers were in poor condition, and both the layouts were full of tie bars due to issues with the gauge, etc. So really were life expired. So more pictures here. You can see the damage to the sleeper there with the kind of the age of them and the indentation from multiple impacts of the rail. And these adjustment switches are actually quite good condition, but obviously we converted the track from jointed to CWR, and removing those adjustments, which obviously removes any potential for ongoing maintenance for these things, which are a maintenance challenge. So design and development challenges. So we had to reverse engineer the layouts. So typically you would have you do your kind of track design, and then you'd give that to the S&C manufacturer, and the S&C manufacturer would go, there's your manufacturer's design. But because we had such short timescales, we had to get the manufacturer out first, and then they measured up the S&C and says, listen, the geometry looks like this, and they designed all the geometry. So the geometry is coming from the S&C manufacturer, which is completely back to front, but it was necessary to get the crossings particularly, and the curved switches, etc. on time. So everything was kind of like reverse engineered from the S&C manufacturer. Both layouts were on a geometric and CAN transition. So how do I think they used to like to do things? So 3, 4, 5A points, which was the points done the first year in 22-23. We managed to get a geometry that was regular through the S&C and put the CAN transition either side of it. We benefited from the kind of modern concept of you don't need cant below 40 miles per hour. So yeah, so that S&C was zero canted. Unfortunately, because of constraints, we couldn't deal the cant transition going into the platform, which I'll get onto in a minute. But that's the solution for that side. However, on the other side, which was the one we delivered this year, which was 3, 4, 4AB points, the S&C is firmly located on a transition which we weren't able to do anything about. So we got a derogation to recreate that, because we thought that was critical given the kind of inherent risks with that. And essentially recreated it. I'll show you the design in a minute, and the kind of control that we did for that to make sure, because when you're doing a rake, I suppose, on plain line, it's relatively straightforward. When you're doing an S&C, it's a bit tricky. Hopefully Tom can give us stories later on how to do that before 3D dozing, because I'm not sure how it was done before 3D dozing, but we did the 3D dozer to set the rake through the bearers, and we just dropped the S&C on top of it. Some good slides on that coming up on how that was done, and we also put an enhanced control network in spigots. Yeah, quite good stuff. A lot of issues with the overhead line in the area, so we came to do some of the adjustments that we hoped to do, and the Mark I 1950s overhead line didn't quite like it. I think this is a kind of issue for everyone, so it's within tolerances, but the maintenance team are actually going to catch that later on. But we did know all the challenges with it, so we had a Form EB done by the designers, PBH, and we had an early engagement from our maintenance team. So we're kind of like a matrix organisation in Network Rail. So we've got a standalone works delivery section doing the track works. However, our overhead line maintenance team support us in that, which works quite well given their experience, especially when you're dealing with older overhead line equipment. And the job in 22-23, of course, in network rail fashion, the power supply for the track was right below the track. So the power supply for the train station was right below the track, and it was wasn't a 240 volt. Can't remember, but it was relatively high. So we had to have close control on the dig. We've got some slides on that coming up to show you how we managed that. We spoke about conversion to CWR, which was interesting. So there's a lot of RCF in the area. And we went to the rail management team. We were concerned about stressing such heavily supposed defective rail, but the guys looked at it on the kind of rail viewer and gave us the assessment that was good. As long as we could find suitable points to weld into for our stress welds. So yeah, it was good. Obviously looking at for sleeper condition. Thankfully, sleeping condition in the plain line errors was good enough to do that. So yeah, it was good. And then one of the kind of disappointing aspects for us as a team is the platform at Dalmuir is wide on both sides. So I think it's about 800 or so. So ideally, if you'd done a remodel, you may have been able to tackle that in the respect of you could maybe sort those non-compliances. Or maybe not, maybe it's still needed, would need cope alterations, but the platform is kind of wide, so we had to limit our tamping extents going into platform. It's not unusual, these issues, but I think earlier investment would certainly, and earlier thought about these things would help in addressing them, because certainly wasn't enough scope within the work we were doing to address that. And lack of plan, so we had to skeletonise the panels and use heavy lifters to get the S&C panels in place due to non-availability of any other plan. So we picture the S&C design here. Obviously we can't zoom into it, but this is the one that was so this is was on a cant and geometric transition, and we regularised the geometry through it and moved the cant transition off it. You can see the platform to the right hand side in here, which was obviously causing issues as well, given the fact it's non-compliant, but we've essentially just tied into the existing geometry there. Yeah, so ideally what you would have done with the whole thing is, so the S&C is on zero cant, but you have to transition up to a curve which isn't actually required. So ideally you would extend that renewal through the platform and take off the cant through the platform, all the platform clearances. Really interesting and a real design challenge. We've actually got one of the designers, Colin McKechnie, who designed this on the call. So yeah, it's a real challenge. This was the other side. You can see the cant transition noted through here. So this was the existing cant transition through the S&C. So you've got a regular cant through half of it, and that allowed us to fix the transition through it. Again, this was all reverse engineered. So it was the S&C manufacturer gave us the geometry, and we made the design fit around it to some extent. Yeah, Colin said it was one of the hardest designs he's ever worked on, but I'm sure he says that's to all his clients when he gets the billing. Yeah, so it was really interesting, but with the 3D dozing, etc., it's gone in well. So we picture here of the Mark 1 overhead line equipment. The particular issue in the Mark 1 equipment was this. Can't remember what the overhead line calls it, but this flyer in here, it looked okay from the ground, but when they went up to do the overhead line operations, it was heavily corroded. So this is one of the things that needs to be followed up on. But worth bearing in mind when you see these kind of Mark 1 equipment, the alterations that you think you may be able to do in advance may not be possible. And that's from the guys that work on it all the time. Picture here of the guys scrapping out, and you can see the 3D and digging out to some extent. You can see the 3D dozer to the front of the screen sitting ready to go with its 3D dozing equipment set on, and a couple of machines digging out in the hole there. So yeah, again, back to the 3D dozing. So the way the 3D dozer is controlled is from this toll station unit, which is clamped to the mast. I'm not an expert in this, but it's controlled separate from other things. It's clamped to the mast, and what we did is we set up spigots for attaching targets to throughout the site, which are above, like the units that you can see, that the train. So the toll station knows where it is relative to all the spigots, and it's clamped to there, and obviously it's robotic. And one of the occupational health benefits of it is you're taking the need for technical staff to be anywhere near that dozing at all. So it's really good in that respect. So you're taking away your ballast dust issues. You're taking away potential for staff to be in close proximity to the dozing. So it's a great bit of kit, and obviously allowed us to do the kind of cant and geometric transition through the S&C. This is the profile that was created for the 3D dozing. Not an expert in this again, but that was the 3D profile. A separate company, specialist company, did this for us, given all the different formats of the information the Trimble kit needs to do it. I think everyone that's tried to use 3D dozing has had a problem at some point with it. So on the Wednesday night before the renewal, which actually started on the Friday morning, we got the guy that was going to be operating the kit with the kit that was going to be used, and did it in the car park. So that machine that was strapped up to the mast is the one that's on the legs there. And we had a bit of a play about in the yard to make sure it could receive it and whatnot. So it was well prepped before we went out into site to make sure it worked. Like I said, it's not uncommon for folk to not take the correct amount of time to make sure these things work in advance. So some really good practice there, and certainly we want to use 3D dozing on all our sites going forward, particularly for the occupational health aspect, but also we want to make sure that it's always tested in advance as well with the kit. Here you can see that the heavy lifters. So this one isn't, but a lot of the panels were skeletonized to lift them in. We couldn't get the kit that we wanted, so we kind of reduced to this. However, it did work particularly well. Before obviously all the panels were marked up, and that anyone that's put panels in before knows the importance of marking stuff up. So there was some lessons learned regarding that. It would be easier to do. So we marked up the panels in the yard. However, we should have marked them up at the build yard when they were on the ground, because it's much easier to get in about them. So that was a lessons learned on the project. But yeah, worked well. Again, another shot here of the panels getting lifted in. I think it might be the same panel, it's just from a different angle. This bridge is very popular for photographs, if you'll see. You can't see it here, but that's another panel that's gone in, and it is skeletonized to some extent. What the team did is they put in one road and then the other road, and obviously lifting off one road into the other road, which is common in renewals for S&C units. And it's like modular. Before they had modular, folk had to come up with other ways of doing it, which were probably the right way given the experienced people with the modular units. So yeah, you can see it's skeletonized in there to get the panel weights down, etc. Nice wee picture here of the once the assets were in the ground. A lot of the slave panels came off, etc., and line up the timber ready to go. It's very high profile, so I thought I'd put this in. So as well as pressure from the route director, because it's such a poorly performing area with all the associated works going on. We had an MP come along I'm not sure if it's an MSP or an NP. Do you remember his name, Douglas? You remember that?
Martin Doherty Hughes.
NP. Yeah, so that's the chap on the right with the blue hat. So Douglas is actually the cameraman here. Sort of MP, and this wasn't staged for the MP, but if you look back in the photographs, there's a bridge. So the guys got drawings waterproofed and put on the wall for guidance, so they could walk between that bridge, go in and see what was going on, what it was meant to look at, reference. It's quite lucky it was there, but also really helpful for the teams to see the layout of the site. And again, then just walking down, he's pointing at stuff. Good action photo, isn't it? Yeah. Apparently, he was fascinated by this. He was a bit of a railway buff.
MP.
So the photos that come up were from the year before. So the ones you've seen were from this year. These are ones are from the 22-23 work bank. You can see the nice bit of dozing there. Existing ballast in here. Again, another nice shot of the triple whacker, etc. A nice shot in here. You can see the old track in the background, which was to be done. That's the picture there of the wall. That's the wall where the picture is. The drawings are that you've seen in the previous picture, which is what I'm making reference to for the future years job. Again, nice one of the points straight after they were renewed in 22-23. Oh, nice picture. So got some traces here. So this is the upline. So you can see the points there going into the platform and the crossover before it. So this is 344, 345A points, and the blue area is before. So real maintenance challenge for the maintenance team. You can see all the dip joints in there due to the jointed track and the adjustment switches and the pure condition of the assets and the twists, etc. And all that kind of not so good stuff. And then following our works, much better. All that kind of horrible thing you've seen on the slide before, that's gone from that heavily actuated track recording to a nice smooth one. So yeah, much better. The downline, which is a single point end that's been kind of tied out, which is 344 points. You can see here again, it's got a kind of heavily dip jointed angry trace. Again, it's significantly smoother. For those that are eagle-eyed, there is a bit of a twist in here, around about here. The tamper lost its encoder wheel. It went awry, so we've actually last night tampering to rectify those slight overlifts, which was due to tamper. But yeah, good, much vast improvement. And kind of get towards the summary. Dalmuir S&C is an example of doing the right thing. So all the steel work issues are resolved. You've removed the adjustment switches, the crippled points and the defective crossings. You convert to CWR, which is probably the main challenge for getting rid of the jointed track. It's a menace in a kind of modern railway. And we've made it also CRT compliant. So all those trigger points for pure geometry are gone, and it's now a nice stressed layout. We've renewed the point operating equipment, providing reliable point actuation. There was a lot of issues with the point operating equipment itself. It's often an issue with the S&C refurb that isn't addressed. It's doing the point operating equipment at the same time, whereas this is giving you like a whole system solution. But you've extended the asset life by multiple control periods, supporting modernising maintenance, moving from maintenance heavy to not really needing that much maintenance at all, hopefully. And you start, put it in twice apologies, and it's kind of like a cost-effective solution. So there's a wee before picture. You can see the tie bars, the poor quality timbers, the kind of indentation on the sleepers, etc. And if you're eagle-eyed, you'll see the adjustment switches, etc. in the back. And there's one here at the end where it's all nice fresh ballast and it's all renewed and nice. Yeah. So that's the end of the presentation, Greg. Hopefully it's a bit informative.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jonathan. I'm just going to check the chat there. Don't have any questions posted there, so I guess I'll open up to the room here if anyone's got any questions. Jim?
Jonathan, thank you very much for that presentation tonight. I certainly found it most interesting. Winding the clock back to the early noughties when West Coast Route Mod was Flavour of the Month, and Scotland, bit of the route mod was some heavy maintenance at Carstairs. You've come an awful long way, and I think you've recognised the failings that we had in the past with heavy maintenance, where changing the odd timber and the odd IRJ was thought to cure everything. Without a design, you're going in there with a design. It's really a renewal you're doing. So the important thing, I think, is you're going in there with an appropriate specification. You're going in there with a design, and yes, you will achieve a significant betterment in track quality and extend significantly the life of the asset. You're talking about a 45-year-old piece of S&C in there. So, well done.
It's interesting though, because obviously you're not getting all the benefit of a new layout, but you're certainly, like, sometimes when you do well, I think the thing is Network Rail's recognised everything you said. So going into CP7, all the refurb budgets are going up. So like I don't know the exact figures, so I don't want to give them out, but it's significantly more investment in trying to do the right thing, Jim. So instead of doing patchwork solutions, Network Rail's recognised as a whole that we need to do better solutions. Obviously, we've got an efficiency challenge and how would you say, inflationary challenge, which is a big thing for the railway. Lots of things like rail is now significantly more expensive and sleepers, etc., than what it was. But yeah, Network Rail's recognised that, and we're trying to do more of this type of thing. Maybe not to the same extent of this, but certainly in the vein of doing the right thing at locations rather than a part solution.
Yeah, absolutely. You see, getting the spec right is absolutely critical. I do recall going down to a meeting in Crewe, and I'll not say the name of the consultants, but they were American. And we sat there and we talked about places like Preston and Carstairs, where we'd spent a lot of money, we'd done a lot of work, but we actually hadn't improved track quality. And I said then, the problem is your specification. Yeah. If you're not going to change the ironwork, if you're not going to change badly crippled joints, you're not going to change simple things like barrels, and you're not going to look at a design, you're not going to look at the formation, forget it. Yeah. You've done all that there, and yeah, that ticks all the boxes. That's refurbishment as it should be.
Tom, I've got one or two questions. So maybe you stop me when I get too far. Okay, Jonathan, great presentation, and I take my hat off to you and the heavy refurb team. I've been involved in that theatre before, and as an ex-maintainer, maintaining crossover on a curve, never an easy job. Doing like for like replacement to a design that somebody's got to sign off, never an easy task. It just doesn't fit. it works, but it doesn't fit modern design standards.
No.
But specifying the scope of your works is obviously critical to the success of what you do. And that has an impact on your programme, how much time you've got. Who is the bold individual that specifies the works required, and who then signs it off? Who's the authoriser?
It's kind of, for us, it's a tripartite agreement. So, works delivery have like a technical team that would go out and scope the works. But what they do is try and get out with the maintenance team as best practice. So there's a walkout with the maintenance team and the works delivery team. And for S&C refurb particularly, there's a member from the asset management team as well there. And there's a representative from each of those teams that would sign the specification off. I think it's often quite a difficult process. So when it's a complete renewal like that, which you've seen we don't do as a majority of, it's 207 units, and we've got X amount of these, and relatively new thing that we're doing, it's quite difficult often to agree what needs done on a life expired unit. So often it was easier at the start of the project, because the project at the start was change timbers, re-gauge the switches, put on stretcher bars. But now the Pandora's box is open. I mean, you can do anything you want in S&C, and defining what the priorities are, especially now when there's a huge focus now on performance going to CP7. We need to make the right decisions. So I think the next step from that is trying to get the signaling RAMs involved, because that MSR work bank aligns to S&C refurb work bank, but none of that's easy conversations.
Thanks for that. I think the critical thing, what you just said in your response there, is that in the Pandora's box that is open, and you know, all bets are off, and you can do what you want within your budget limit. It's that fact that the budget limit is then starting to recognise that in terms of performance, if you want to perform that unit to perform the way you want it to do, be a bit more robust and not fail, then you have to spend the extra money at this refurbishment stage to get value for your money.
Yeah, it's fine though, Tom, because it's even you scope back and you so see, before we were doing the complete renewals, we were doing heavy refurbs, and the budget now ahead for a heavy refurb was pretty much what we can deliver at complete renewal. So if you were doing that in CP7, you could have done 36 units of complete renewal. And if you were doing like cost, so it's quite interesting in that respect, because a heavy refurb essentially is a medium plus the ballast. But like I said, if you're not tackling the steel work, etc., and you're not tackling the point operating equipment, you still got all those trigger points for poor geometry and potentially poor condition point operating equipment as well. So you're not tackling all the issues, are you?
But what you're doing is you're tackling the critical parts of the infrastructure that are leading to the delays and poor performing, and you're prioritising those before nice to have stuff. Like, it'd be great if we had the steelwork looking great, but actually it's not the steelwork that's causing the problem, it's the track bed or it's the bearers. Okay, maybe another question for me then on the current strategy is a bit reactive, as you confirmed there.
Yeah.
The alternative to a reactive strategy is one of predict and prevent. We'd all love to be there. Do you think that if we were able to get to predict and prevent strategy, that would be a much more effective way to maintain the asset?
Yeah, I think, I suppose there's a couple answers to that. So Network Rail's invested really heavily in what's called the Insight system, which people in this room may or may not be aware of. So for anyone that was in maintenance for a period of time, we always did like a trace review, which the guys are still doing. But what the Insight system does is it's monitoring your track, and it gives you a projection of how your asset will perform in in the future based on deterioration, etc. But it does it in a way that's quite straightforward. So Network Rail is investing in trying to make that easier for our engineers. But yeah, this control period, going into control period 6, it was always a yearly work bank. Going into control period 7, we've got a control period 7 work bank. So we've got so with that, so we've got the insight tool, but we've also got that 5-year work bank. So what our hope is to try and start getting a look at that stuff earlier with maintenance, the RAM, etc., and that kind of walkouts and stuff. But we're also bringing in a signalling engineer to try and align the MSR work bank to that as well. So CP7 is just around the corner, so it's probably not as far on as what we would like, but what we'll probably find is going into maybe year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5 with CP7, we'll have some really kind of quite robust solutions for this type of stuff. That's the plan, anyway. Fingers crossed.
My last question, Jim, your strategy of like-for-like replacement is obviously driven by the fact that you're in very small areas and you can't do wholesale replacements, changing track form types and so on. You're doing your best to do that. But is there a danger that doing this like-for-like replacement, replacing hardwood timber with hardwood timber, reduces the opportunity for carbon savings in replacing, say, hardwood for composite bearers? And rather than taking something from the Amazon basin and bringing it over here and sticking it in an S&C unit at Dalmuir, you would be using a composite bearer that would have a reduced carbon and embodied carbon element and have a future recyclability.
I think it's a good challenge, and something that we should look at. I mean, it's a good challenge. Talking, could you put a concrete in here rather than putting in a timber? Because in essence, that's not that much of a step up, is it, from what you did there? I think separate from that, I think the kind of long-term goal for Network Rail is composites for everything. I don't know the ins and outs of that. I know that's what people from technical authority have hinted to. They must know the sums and must know how cheap they can get these composites. It's not realised yet. They're still relatively expensive, but yeah, I think there is a challenge there to maybe could you upgrade to concrete? I don't know, because the more you upgrade, the more you're adding in costs. So you're thinking, well, could you put a concrete in? Could you put in shallow depth switches? Could you upgrade the point operating equipment? It all starts adding up. Do you know what I mean? But
could be driven by the design. If the design said instead of hardwood bearer, composite bearer,
yeah,
if that was in the design, would it then push the hand of those that are paying for that bit of asset to say, yeah, actually, we will have a composite bearer?
Yeah.
So it's what drives the changes.
Yeah.
We can see it, but how do we embrace it is, I think, the challenge, really.
Yeah.
You're on, Jim.
Okay, thank you. Tom has really just totally changed my train of thoughts, Jonathan.
Yeah.
When he started talking about concrete, you put concrete bearers in, and right away you're into reballasting. You're integrated ballasting. Particularly under the wires, you're approaching a very constrained tunnel. Less said about twin tunnels are better. So that's really not, if you like, a sustainable solution. Did you ever give any consideration, Jonathan, to the use of steel sleepers in your S&C refurbishments, particularly a situation like Dalmuir, where effectively it's
there's lots of room, Jim.
It's all steel. Oh,
steel sleepers, come on. Pick up.
I suppose that's that. No, I don't think there's any approved steel sleeper. Certainly not asset policy. You could argue the whole thing's not asset policy, but there's certainly no steel sleeper design that I know of that's kind of like off the shelf. Maybe Tom's going to say.
You'll remember many years ago, in a previous life for you and me, we did look at putting a steel sleeper layout in at our guy, I think it's still sitting in Holland Blenkinsop's yard in County Durham. There we go.
Pictures, yeah.
Yes, yes.
My personal feeling on steel sleepers is I suppose in an area like Dalmuir, which is known to be wet, is they don't like platform areas because of the salt, and they don't like wet areas because of the wet. So and there's lots of S&T type stuff going on in switches and crossings. So my gut feeling would be no for that, Jim, to be honest. However, I would be welcome to be proven wrong in that, but certainly wouldn't want to be first to type on something which could have a negative signalling aspect, and folk, I wish we just put the timber in and not had to deal with steel sleepers.
I suppose fairly critical location in North Clyde network, though. You don't want to be for first of type. But kind of moving on to what I was really going to talk or ask you about was your delivery team. Have you built up a refurbishment delivery team? Looking at my own experience in the past, where I ran or tried to manage, perhaps is the better description, an S&C renewals team. S&C renewals guys hated heavy maintenance work. They hated going and doing refurbishment work. They just didn't like it. They just didn't perform. What are you doing differently?
The way we like to set up the teams, I suppose, is a balance of work. So a lot these big jobs take a lot of preparation, and so the guys like it from that perspective. They like the interest, they like doing that. However, they can get overwhelmed by it. So if you give them too many of them, things start going wrong. So we try to balance out a number of these jobs throughout years. So we've got 6 teams. So each of these teams will have a number of interesting jobs a year, which is really driven by the work bank. But so it might not be the one closest to your depot, but we're trying to make a balance across the teams so that we've got both interesting work, but also both manageable work. And 2 of those things are quite important for the teams. And then you balance that off by more routine business as usual work, where you don't have to put as much thought in it, although you do have to think about all the work you do. But so you're doing maybe a job like this one week, and then the next week you're going out repadding, etc. So the teams are balanced, Jim, in that respect. We don't find much issues with how the works are developed. We do have a couple of what we call development supervisors in the team who look more at these jobs to help with the planning and supervision on site, even though they're called development supervisors. But yeah, it's just mixed across the team. To try and create a good work balance in the teams. Yeah, which seems to work quite well.
Right, I'll say one more thing, and then I'll 2 more things, and then I'll shut up. The waterproof drawing out in the site, absolutely brilliant. I know people like taking tablets and things out in site, but an S&C drawing, you can't look at a tablet. I thought your idea there of having that waterproofed 150 drawing under that bridge, absolutely great. A great point of reference.
Yes. But normally we do it, we put it on the cabin, do you know that? But obviously when there was a bridge right next to the site, the guys just took the opportunity to put it on the site. And the benefit is it's like 100, well, probably less than 100 yards away from the actual site of work. So you've got that to make reference to.
Cabin's a long way away, and once they get to the cabin, there's always a temptation of a cup of tea.
Yeah.
But no, great idea, great initiative. Final thing I'll mention is your twin tunnels. Any comment you wish to make on them?
The works went really well down there. So the issue at Dalmuir Twin Tunnels was there was a tamper which I spoke about, one overlifted on our job, so it's not uncommon. It overlifted in the area and ripped the base plates out the slab there. So the work was to drop the track and reinstate the base plates. That went really well as well. You've seen the pictures that a week after we'd done the work, it was under 3 meters of water. It was
Yeah.
It's spectacular.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the water was gone about a couple of days later. It was really so. Yeah, the slab work went quite well. We've got a specialist. Well, we've got a framework contract with Amco. So we've got a specialist contractor that does all our slab work. It is really specialist. I know for years, having been in Network Rail for a while, we didn't really get a handle on slab, but now we've got like a rolling programme and a framework contractor, and we're seeing good results from them as a kind of specialist organisation delivering slab renewals.
That's good to say. Twin tunnels at Dalmuir were always a horror. When I came back into track renewals in Scotland in the late 90s, that was the first job my team was delivering, was rebase plating. I have to hold my hand up and admit it, not very well through Dalmuir twin tunnels. And you had the issues, you had 98-pound railway trying to put in pan 14 base plates in very wet conditions with not necessarily an appropriate grout. And the cess drain, the crown of the cess drain was well above the end bit of the tunnel. So you water-wise, you beat before you start.
Yeah.
Horrible place. Glad you've sorted it.
Well, the guys were in putting. We've had people in there for months now doing some of the drainage refurb. I think the issue in there, apparently, if I'm led to believe, and Tom can correct me on this, apparently Scottish Water's assets are undersized. So when it rains a bit, everything's coming out the railway.
The water comes out of the sewer in the first place, and it's the pumping station is supposed to remove it and put it in the sewer. So until the water out of the sewer dies away again, you're stuck with 3 meters of water, as you said.
Apparently there is a long-term plan to deal with all of that, but like everything, I suppose you're constrained by finances.
Yeah. Jonathan, just a couple of little sort of observations, I suppose. Really refreshing, and it ties into what we've talked about on these meetings for the last number of months that I've attended. Each one is the continual need for RAM involvement at an early stage on anything. For too long, I'm not controversial, but for too long, some of the RAM team were away from the point of work, if you like. It's really refreshing and engaging, the early engagement with the RAM team at scope level. If you can get one of those guys out with you while you're doing your initial walkout, not only do they get value for money, but they're also getting a better product for probably the same money. My view on it is that they should be engaged from literally from day one, and we still see times when that's not the case. And I hope I'm not being too controversial saying that.
I think everything's a journey, isn't it?
Of course.
Like I know what you mean, especially for some assets, there's not actually a lot of asset management within that. So like we're certainly not 100% where we want to be a project, but like you said, we've got that dialogue and we've got that engagement with the RAM team, etc. So I suppose it's on that journey, isn't it? I suppose everything that we do is a journey, isn't it? But yeah, it's good to have them on board, regular meetings, etc.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your presentation. Lots of aspects I could probably ask you about. One particular one was the design, and with Colin being on the call, I'm sure he'd confirm that. What was one of the particular technical challenges, the toughest challenge really was that the getting from jointed to CWR. I'm sure Colin would maybe have an input there, but to take out all of those joints and through an S&C, it must be fairly design problematic, I would imagine.
That aspect was okay. It was relatively straightforward because we essentially just renewed. We took out the adjustment switches, and because the layout was probably partly non-compliant, it was one of those layouts that's got adjustment switches, but it's mostly welded up. Which, if you look at the standards, Scotland were a bit more relaxed about it. See, if you go down to England, the south of England, they're quite consistent. It's either CWR or it's jointed track, and you Scottish folk are absolutely mental because it gets really hot down here, which I found out quite quickly when I went down there. So it was essentially just a question of just welding it up, but doing all the necessary checks, etc. But I know Colin's on the call, but see, because it was reversed engineered as opposed to forward engineered, it certainly it meant that Colin didn't have the kind of maybe the freedom that he would have had before. I don't know if Colin wants to comment on it at all, on 344 AB points, does he?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is the whole timeline of it, obviously, as well. We were quite lucky that we did 345 last year, and the Topo survey actually covered 344 crossover as well. So that made that obviously give us a bit of a head start. The only issue was the original Topo stopped right at the switches of the alpha points, so we could only really do a real like for like, because we had no idea what the alignment was doing to the low mileage side of it. So that's where the manufacturers and the construction staff come in and helped us out with by doing like Versine and cant checks to the low mileage side. So we were able to sort of confirm that what we were proposing was going to be feasible. But yeah, it purely was because of that whole timeline of it. We were stuck with having to propose exactly what was there and get our alignment sort of where the screenshot is now, is just to purely tie in on that point and then fix that 470 meter radius at the alpha points, and then whatever else happened to the low mile side just purely happened, purely because of the fact of getting the manufacturers to get everything approved and then get all them to start manufacturing. So that was the real challenge. And then obviously trying to match up with the rake across, with the transitions being slightly different lengths as well. And then obviously the vertical alignment, because the separation of the tracks isn't parallel all the way through as well. So we had that complication of getting it to work. So there is a slight, the rake's not quite fully compliant. There's like a 3 mil out, worst case, and that's purely because of the, you can't have a vertical alignment that changes every 5 or 10 meters because it's just not compliant. That so there's like a best fit on the I think it's the up where we've got a best fit alignment through just to get you the best rake possible. So yeah, that was kind of the main challenges, is purely because we didn't have the survey to be able to create the parallel and everything all nicely matching up on both tracks. Yeah, so that was the main challenge. It wasn't so much because, like Jonathan said, we renewed and took out all the adjustment switches, so we were basically tied into the existing CWR. So that was wasn't too bad from that point of view.
But there is one aspect of the upgrade to CWR, so the switches are full depth. So as part of the works we have to fit, they're not on yet because we're still tamping the layout. We need to fit lateral resistance plates because you need those on for the full depth switches. So it will have full depth lateral resistance plates. Full depth switches, CWR need. Lateral resistance plates from the last tail block to, I think, 6 timbers beyond the fronts or something like that. Or something like that. Yeah.
I just noticed with a comment and a question online there from Peter Woodbridge. As a signal engineer, the phrase like for like sends shivers down the spine. My experience, it really is. What do you do if existing is far from compliance with modern standards?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think. It wasn't so much an issue here because it was clamp blocks before. So clamp blocks is kind of like a almost best practice, Steve, isn't it? We were going down the route of HPSS and high drive, and then suddenly went full circle, went, let's go back to clamp block. So this is almost like they are the kind of asset type of choice in this location. There is a slight tweak on them, which I don't understand, which is a clamp lock version 3, which I think is very similar. These ones are version 2 because of certain aspects of it, which I can't explain. But apparently it's not terrible. Yeah, so and you are upgrading the stretcher bars to, but there are other assets. So like if you think about medium refurb in general, you're not always doing this extent of work. So for instance, you could be working on the older design of HW points motors, which don't have an extended sole plate, and they're in discussion just now. And what we would do in that situation would be put the modern extended sole plate design on. However, that's currently prohibited from use because it's got an issue with bolt shearing, which is a separate conversation, and they're coming up with a new design for it. But where possible, we try and bring things up to standard. There is a lot of things within like 6100 with compliance and whatnot, and where possible, we try and engage with the SMEs to understand what they want done. But being honest, and it's something we look at, like I said, we're bringing a signalling engineering team. What we're hoping to do is get better alignment between the MSR, the minor signalling renewals work bank, and our own work bank to bring things up to compliance, not just from a track perspective, but from a point operating equipment perspective at the same time, which is obviously the right thing to do.
I think it's a general response to that, though. It's not signalling necessarily, but you already pointed out there was non-compliances, so the answer is we apply for derogations where it doesn't meet as well.
But it's a good point. So we did a derogation for this set of points for the rake, because obviously continuous rake through the S&C unit has future implications for maintenance and construction, etc. However, the ones that are more like asset policy, we've considered it as this is more like maintenance. So you're not doing a renewal. However, you could argue that that there maybe should be, because like obviously you've got asset policy for S&C, which is to put in but this was really just an S&C refurb. It's not a renewal. And like I said, we're only doing it for a couple of point ends here and there, but it is interesting when you talk about that. I mean, if you go back to because it is an interesting discussion, because if you're doing a proper refurb, you're going to get that NR56, which is there's been a lot of studies done on the geometry and the concretes, and you're getting, like you said, a full upgrade to POE. So, or in this case, it was you are almost getting there. You're getting like all that. So there's all this other stuff that you aren't doing, even from a points upgrading and bonding aspect. If you go about the network, you'll see these nice new transposition bonds, which are the big yellow ones. We've put on the older type because the new ones require an element of design to support them and not upgrades to the bonding plans. So like you're not getting that. So yeah, like it is quite interesting. And obviously, when you're doing associated plain line as well, there is benefits that both from installation for levels, etc., but also from future maintenance and future renewals, etc. I mean, it's there for a reason. So it's not, it's really a heavy refurb, but it's not really a renewal at all. And I think you need to draw a differentiation in there.
Any follow-up questions from the room? No. Right.
Sorry, something you would have picked up on the back maintenance engineer for the area. So firstly, just like to say that we're all within the team delighted with what's been delivered. That dramatic relief is, to be honest, and really impressive just the way that the delivery team took the challenge on, which was not inconsiderable, and just seemed to deliver the job with very, very smoothly. So very pleased with that. Thank you very much for your efforts. In terms of this approach, there's been a refurb renewal, if we call it that. Do you have any thoughts on how you think that could or should fit into the S&C asset management plan in Scotland going forward?
It's a difficult question. So the budget for heavy refurb is significantly higher than what it was before. So the heavy refurb has gone. I think it's almost triple in CP7 to what it was in CP6. So that's a real challenge to say, right, you're triple the amount what you had before from a money perspective. The budget for what we did here fits into that. So like yeah, so like the money's there in some respect, but you just need to be careful because this isn't a replacement for a renewal. So you'll still have an S&C unit on a S&C transition that's timber, but however, from a value for money perspective and taking away, immediate TME concerns for the next, I would hope, at least 10 years or more, then it kind of gives you a bit of peace of mind in that. So Network Rail is gearing up as a business to do more things like this, and certain aspects of heavy refurb. A lot of the kit that we used to do heavy refurb, it's essentially you're just adding really the cost of the steel working, which is expensive. Like I said, fingers crossed we'll do some more stuff like this, but I guess you just need to be careful when you're doing it and it's the right solution for the right place. I think
obviously considering it's going to be relatively low line speeds, track category and so on, but we do have a lot of lessons that fall into those brackets. And when we talk about steel work, I mean, I've lost count of the number of sites where there's been a massive amount of money spent on the refurb, but it's handed back to us and it's still full of problems.
Yep.
And we can't solve. So I think taking that extra step with the steel work, if it can be done within a budget, is certainly very promising. And I think we should certainly shown another thing that we didn't have before.
Yeah.
In terms of building that.
Yeah. Even just cutting the see because you've got the panels out and you can cut the formation and you can prepare it. Even that in itself is making a huge difference from certainly things like the railback where you're not doing that level of treatment. So certainly in terms of even the treatment, it's almost like there's a reballast and there's reballast. You know what I mean? It's certainly the correct way to do things.
Yeah, Steve. Yep. Can you go back to the picture of the PWI drawing?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a number of insulated joints shown in your photographs that were in a tired old state.
Yeah.
Did you manage to put any new 6-hole joints into the layout?
Oh, good question. I believe I can't remember. There is a new 6-hole design for the through road, and I think these ones were 6-hole joints.
Good.
In there. So we did get some. It's kind of like, well, so before with the timber layout, you couldn't do that, but there is a new design for that. I'm not.
But the base plates, you mean?
It's a different. It's a different. I want to be corrected on this. It's a new arrangement.
Right. Okay.
See
the joints at the left-hand end of that drawing at the switch toes.
Mm-hmm.
Did you manage to move them back from the switch toes to improve maintainability, for example?
So this end there is no insulated joints in the switch toes.
Oh, right.
However, at this side there are some.
Yeah.
So that is something that you would get in. I think along the right. I don't know. I don't you can see them, but there is some. There's some on the fronts, not on that side, but on the other side. There's definitely some on in the fronts or on the lead up to the fronts.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do that as part of this treatment, so So we did have to, so we had to go to signaling team, so we went to NRDD, who's Network Rail's in-house signaling team, and we had to check the file points and the clearance points of all the joints to make sure they were compliant.
Yeah.
And some of them did move slightly to fit the layout and the standard positions, etc. So there was some moving by a couple of meters, but that kind of, I think, was put on another side. So that rationalisation of joints, etc. Potentially. So a good example is I was involved in a renewal at Cope Bridge, and for whatever reason in that area, when they did the signalling, they didn't do a great job of it over the years. And as part of the renewal, there was a rationalisation of the insulated rail joints carried out. That element of signalling design is not part of what we did here. So this isn't like a treatment type we roll out everywhere, or so. But no, so it wouldn't do that. So essentially, and the testing regime as well was G110. So it's not quite SWTH, but it's got that level of complexity. However, if we are moving insulated joints, we would move to SWTH testing. So there was a signal works testing for the double tail cabling. However, the double tail cables were put on outside the core, and that was to simplify the testing arrangements for the testers. So it was purely on the signaling. But so yeah, so with G110 testing, and none of the insulated joints were really moved from the existing positions, although we did run them through NRDD to make sure that all the positions were correct and there was no potential issues with yeah.
Good. So, yeah.
Maybe the last one.
Sure.
About your, you had lovely pictures of the laser dozer,
Yes,
3D
yeah.
laser dozer. Did your design include, and it's a very short area for excavation, did your design include ballast ramps? And if so, did you make them? And if
So
yes, how did you make them?
I obviously didn't explain it very clearly. So this job is like, so the reballast element of it is optional. So this particular site, following some trial holes, was Scarify. So the work that was carried out that we're going to do on the other one we're doing this year is a reballast. Again, due to the ballast conditions particular to that area. So. And this occasion it wouldn't have, but it would include the kind of dozing of the ballast ramp. It's a specialist company we use for it. I suppose it's not Radio 1, you can do advertising. It's a company called SciTech, and they've come up with the profiles and whatnot for us. And obviously you can come up with multiple profiles depending on what you want to do with them. And in this particular occasion, we were concerned about the rake, so it was designed so we can install the rake, and it worked. Can't commend it highly enough. The whole process, the guys lifted it, and they were so happy with it because all the cants were correct and that. And then there was an issue with the tamper and the encoder wheel, and it overlifted in a point off the job, which was particularly frustrating because up until that point everything was perfect, and it was a bit off the job as well. But yeah, so yeah, 3D dozing, you can program it to be whatever you want on, which is, I suppose, one of the benefits of it. Yeah.
I'm thinking of the pictures, that was more of a skim dig than a Scarify.
Yeah, there's always an element of skim because you have to dig some down to square it off. Yeah.
So that's you preparing that ballast bed by profiling with a bit of rake on it.
Yeah, you can
And
see
that's where you're.
you can see the two profiles
3D.
overlaying each other there, so you can see one below the other one.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? It looks like you've had a really good result with it, especially like through the crossover where you've got a transition and
Yeah.
But did you have a contingency in the event of that system failing?
Yeah, we had the
Oh, 2D dozing.
yeah, had the 2D dozing kit, and the guys had all the levels, the 2D ones ready to go. It was actually a contingency. Jonathan Agnew was here. Said,
Okay.
said,
Before in this field, so I made sure that the 2D was all the lasers set up.
yeah,
So if it failed, there was no downtime.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So,
Perfect.
yeah.
Like, The guys said there was so much less faffing about. The guys that used it said they thought it was going to. The couple of guys in the team were
just susceptible to failing it.
Yeah, yeah. I thought you were going to say buses was the contingency.
Yeah. The guy said that the amount of time you save by 3D dosing as well, they said it takes the half out of it.
Yeah.
They reckoned it saved an hour each time that they did each layer, so it was pretty good in that respect. 1 hour against what they will obviously put contingency there and whatnot, but they were really happy with it.
And the dozer driver would shake your hand because he's the man that you're saving.
Yeah, this is what
I suppose.
He's hands
It
free.
doesn't have to think, no, no.
But nobody has to think, Tom.
And I think when we don't think.
And I suppose it's like tampers, there is lots of benefits from that, but you kind of get into the realms of like, you do worry about people when things go wrong because it's gone wrong, and then folks slap on a 20 and walk away from it. Someone has to come in that knows what they're doing, or recalibrate the machine to fix it. So there is an element of this is the best thing since sliced bread, but there's also an element of de-skilling because if you were to use it all the time, then no one's going to know how to do the 2D, are they not?
Yeah.
Which is a risk, but I suppose the more that we use it as an industry, I think the best practice of, I think Kim's previous photo that for setting it up in the car park was definitely a game changer. See the guys having a play around with it and whatnot. I mean, it's a bit of a fanny shift them, to be honest. But it was a good for them to get out and make sure that it worked and that all the kit could talk to each other, etc. That's often part of the problem is there's someone hasn't pressed the right button in the right order, etc. But the driver that was on that, so sometimes the apparently it was a guy that was on the plant that had worked with it before. So not only did we have takes that were familiar with it, we also had the plant staff are familiar with it, so everyone in the team had used it. So there's a good bit of experience there. There was no, I suppose, we do use different plant suppliers, particularly on different sides of the country or etc. But that was considered. Got some good advertisement there for Quattro. But the Quattro staff were certainly up on it, which was quite fresh and it was good. Yeah.
Thanks. Any final questions at all? Comments? Questions? No? Okay. Which leaves me to give the vote of thanks, Jonathan. So firstly, thanks very much for standing in at such short notice to present tonight. And as a fairly new member of the Glasgow committee, you've earned some major brownie points in doing that. You've managed to pull in quite a crowd tonight as well, so that was great. It was a really interesting presentation. He took us through the history and the evolution of the works delivery, which was supported and developed as best practices and new standards for S&C came out, as you showed us. I thought it was a great slide that showed the difference between a refurb and a traditional full track renewal. I think that's really important. I think if I picked up correctly, so it's something like 30% of the cost of a full renewal as well. It's really great things to point out. And every renewal stems from a problem statement as well, and you described the issues experienced at Dalmuir and the reason that led to the renewal in the first place, with the dipped joints and the damage to switch rails and sleepers, all that good stuff. And it being a problematic area with 40% of the delay minutes in the central area, it's quite a good enough driver to justify it, I would say. Again, he took us through some of the challenges with the concerns with the stress and the age and the condition of the rail, but after the assessment, it got the green light. I think that's something that the rail industry is and should be focusing on a lot more, with minimal viable product and sustainability stuff. It's great to see someone's done that kind of homework, if you like, and proved that it was okay to stick with what was there. And on the flip side, it's typical with any renewal that things that you thought are not required, and then following inspection, you begin to reveal other assets that do need some work. And you pointed out the OLE equipment at one location that was being a bit of work done to facilitate the track renewal as well. So that's great. Some really positive things, the use of the Trimble kit we've talked about on being mounted on the staff to keep staff mounted on the stanchion to keep staff away from the plant, which is always a benefit. Adaptability of you don't all can't always get what you want, as a saying, and you did get the equipment you desired for the panels. So again, building them and breaking them down on site, and then the challenges that brings. Just Jim mentioned the idea of having the drawings on the site, on the bridge. That was really great. I was thinking the next step was you get glow in the dark ink so you can see it underneath. Not sure how much that would cost, but also
logos, translating.
yeah, exactly. And ultimately, in the end, you showed us it was the track recording traces proved that it gave the desired result, and all the value for money that went with it as well. So great presentation, Jonathan. I'll just ask everyone else to join with me, and thank you for that. Thanks very much. For those online, thanks for joining. I'm just about to shut down. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.